Hey guys, this is the Overthinker and welcome to my new channel. This channel is just going to be a talking channel where I just talk about whatever I want to talk about. Right now this is going to be a football video and I'm going to do a lot of football videos, but I might do some other topics here and there. This video we're going to be going over the 2018 draft for the Detroit Lions and all of the picks, as well as what I thought they were going to do in the draft and how that matches up with what they actually did. And I'm also going to slightly go into what they did in free agency and how that might have set up things for the draft. So first off, after the end of the season, I thought the Lions really had to try to get starters on the offensive line as well as in the front seven going into next year, whether that was through the draft or through free agency or both. And we obviously have done both. And that started with signing two linebackers. One was out of, he played for the New York Giants, and the other one played for the Chicago Bears. They both were kind of depth players, but when they got their opportunity to play, they did play pretty well. I don't know if either of them are going to be like Pro Bowl type players, but obviously they are guys with potential, and both of those linebackers that we got are actually pretty fast guys for their size, and I think there might be a lot of potential there for them to become pretty good players. And then obviously we signed LeGarrette Blount. Now I thought this was a pretty good move considering the amount of money that he's getting paid. It's not a very big contract. There's not a whole lot of risk there, and I think that's a very good idea for a team like the Lions. I thought the Lions really had to try to get a bigger back on this team, and that's exactly what they did in free agency. They signed probably one of the better power backs in the NFL in LeGarrette Blount. And I know he's pretty old. I think he's 31 or 32. But he's not the type of player that really relies on his speed a whole lot. And I think I was looking at his playoff stats the other day, and he averages something like 70 or 80 yards a playoff game and gets a touchdown more often than not in the playoffs. So this is a guy that always shows up, and I like that a lot. A guy with some consistency. That's the kind of person you need to be signing on a team-friendly deal. And I think that was a very good move for the Lions. I cannot express that enough. I think that was a very good signing, and I think he has the potential to probably get north of 5 or 6 touchdowns this year, especially if we use him in the red zone, which I do expect us to use him in the red zone because our red zone offense last year was not good. And our short yardage offense last year was not good either. So we could definitely use him on both of those. And hopefully that would be really good for us going forward. And then we also did sign DeShawn Shead out of Seattle. I think that's his name. And I'm pretty sure he's going to probably be like the first guy off the bench to play on the outside. I'm assuming that Nevin Lawson's going to play just because we re-signed him, even though I didn't want to re-sign him. It looks like Nevin Lawson's probably going to start again this year, and he's probably going to compete with DeShawn Shead. Now, as I said earlier, we did sign a couple linebackers in free agency, and I think that was a pretty good idea. And I also think we could have drafted a couple linebackers, but I think overall we did a pretty good job, with the way we attacked the draft and free agency. I mean, we did fill a lot of needs, especially if those guys are going to play well this year. I think the Lions did a very good job of addressing the needs this offseason. Now, going into the first round, there were a few guys that I was looking at for that 20th overall pick, and there was one guy I was thinking maybe they might try to trade up for, and that was Tremaine Edmunds. I wasn't sure how far he was going to fall. I was pretty sure he was probably going to go in the top 11 or 12. I thought the Buccaneers would probably draft him, but I was also hoping that Vita Vea would fall, and another guy would be Marcus Davenport, obviously a very talented pass rusher type player, and he looks like he might develop into something in this league. He definitely has all the tools to become a very good pass rusher, Marcus Davenport. I was kind of hoping he might fall because he's kind of viewed as maybe a project player by some teams, but it looks like the Saints were definitely okay with that. I think Deron Payne would have been another one that would have been good to fall, and then honestly Jair Alexander, that would have been a good one too. And then Leighton Vander Esch, that was another guy I heard a lot of Lions fans talking about. Very fast linebacker, has the ability to cover, and is an aggressive tackler. But obviously, I did in my last video talking about the Detroit Lions offseason needs. I thought we needed to get a starter at center and guard this year. It looks like we only drafted a center. I'm not sure if the tackle we drafted is going to play any guard. But right now it looks like Frank Ragnow is going to be a starter going into next year, and that's really good. I really wanted us to get help on the offensive line, especially if it was the best thing available in the first round. I think that's what we should have done. My way of attacking this draft was going to be going best player available with the first pick at 20. unless something crazy happened. I mean, if Jair Alexander was the best player on the board, I probably would have been okay with taking him, because if you look outside of Darius Slay, we do not have a proven corner on this team. And I think Jair Alexander may be the second best corner in this draft. My best corner in this draft was actually the other corner that the Packers drafted. His name was Josh Jackson. Yeah, that was his name. Yeah, Josh Jackson was the best corner in this draft based on what I've seen. I mean, I've watched him play a couple times, playing against Michigan State, playing against Michigan. This dude is a ball hawk, and he can cover like crazy. So yeah, I definitely would have taken him. I definitely would have taken Josh Jackson, honestly, if he was the best player on the board. I had him rated probably a lot higher than some other people. But, I mean, his tape is outstanding. And I know he doesn't have the best speed, but if you can run a 4.5 in the NFL, that's usually fast enough to play corner, especially if you're that size. And he is a bigger corner, so I was going to be okay with us taking him if that's what the Lions wanted to do. But obviously the Lions addressed one of the bigger needs on this team by taking a center, and that's going to be good going forward, especially if you look at the rest of these picks. We did a lot of things to shore up that offensive line as well as the run game, and that also will help us with pass blocking quite a bit, I'm sure. So yeah, going with Frank Ragnow was probably a really good idea. I think that's going to work out just great. The one guy I had rated ahead of him was actually Billy Price out of Ohio State before he tore his bicep. I mean, you never know what's going to happen after a guy tears his bicep. Usually guys can recover from injuries like that, but you never really know. We need a guy to come in right now. And an injury like that, if it's not healing correctly, could hold a guy out for almost a year if it's not going to heal correctly. So I think it was probably a better idea to go with Frank Ragnow, just because you need a center now and you can't wait a year. All right, so with the second round pick we had, it was the 11th pick in the second round. We took this guy named Kerryon Johnson, who's a pretty good back out of Auburn. I did watch him a couple times last year, and he is a pretty tough running back. He does have some speed as well. He has pretty good vision, and it looks like he knows when to cut up field and just put his foot down and go. And I think that's something that the Lions really wanted, somebody that had a burst and just knew when to take off. Definitely more of a north-south runner, and I think that's probably what the Lions wanted to get. Even though he is a little lighter, I think he's like 210 pounds, 215 pounds. Not the biggest back, but he does have some power, and I did see him run with some power last year in the SEC, which is always impressive. So I definitely think this was a pretty good pick. And some fans might be wondering why we went running back in the second round when there were so many good running backs this draft. But going into this draft, I did not think these running backs were going to go so early. I had a lot of running backs I thought we would be able to get in the third or the fourth round. But all of the good running backs were gone by the third round besides Tyner out of Oregon. There were actually 7 running backs taken in the first 2 rounds. I don't remember the last time that's happened. That's insane. I thought Kerryon Johnson would be there in the 4th round for sure. I thought someone like Nick Chubb would be there in the 3rd round, but that's obviously not what happened. And as we know, this is kind of a copycat league. When you have something that's successful, other teams will copy it. So when we had all of these teams going deep into the playoffs with multiple good running backs on their team, that's obviously what these other teams were thinking, taking these running backs so high in the draft. I mean, on the Eagles had LeGarrette Blount, Corey Clement, and Jay Ajayi, who they traded their 3rd round pick for, I believe. And then he also had the Saints with Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. That was probably the best 2 running backs in the league right there. I think they both made the Pro Bowl. I would be surprised if they didn't. And then he also had Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman on the Falcons. They actually almost beat the Eagles. So there's a lot of teams right now that are trying to get them that 1-2 punch, those 2 running backs. And I think that's because of what happened in the playoffs. The teams that had deep running back stables made it further in the playoffs, and I think that's going to be a big thing going forward, running the ball. So yeah, even if the Lions reached a little bit on this, I'm perfectly happy with getting him, because I know he probably would not have been there in the 3rd round. And yeah, I think the only running back I liked after Kerryon Johnson was actually Tyner, who went in the beginning of the 3rd round, I believe. So I'm definitely happy with us taking Kerryon Johnson there at the 11th pick in the 2nd round. I think it's a great pick. And then with the 18th pick in the 3rd round, the Lions took a safety named Tracy Walker, which was not something anybody was expecting to happen. This is a guy that most people had as a 5th round pick or later. Even Tracy Walker himself was quoted saying he thought he was going to be a 5th round pick, which is interesting. And that might have been a reach by Bob Quinn, but honestly, it's a 3rd round pick. 3rd round picks are not really that valuable. It's pretty rare to get a very good player in the 3rd round. So, I mean, if it's a little bit of a reach, that's just perfectly fine with me. If it works out, this is a great pick. If it doesn't work out, it's not really that big of a deal. It's a 3rd round pick. Now, going into what Bob Quinn said here, he said Tracy Walker is a very athletic, aggressive, fast safety, and he's definitely a very good tackler. From what Bob Quinn said, he plays very good against the better competition, which is very good, I guess. So hopefully he will be able to become a starter at some point. I'm guessing what their idea is to move on from Glover Quinn in a couple years. I mean, he's still playing at a very high level, but I'm assuming he might want more money maybe in the next offseason, and maybe that's what they're going to try and do is replace him with this guy. No idea, but it's always good to have depth at a position like safety, because last year we had one of our starting safeties go down. So yeah, it's probably a pretty good idea to get a safety like this with some developmental tools. Pretty fast guy, good size, and I think it could be a great pick. It might be a bad pick, but it doesn't really matter because it's a 3rd round pick. All right, and then with the 14th pick in the 4th round, the Lions took Da'Shawn Hand out of Alabama. A guy that has been in the national spotlight for quite a while now. He's been a rotational defensive lineman for the Alabama Crimson Tide for a couple years now. This is a guy that has been playing for Alabama for quite a while now. He was the number 1 recruit coming out of high school, and he never really got an opportunity to start until looks like his senior year. He started 9 out of 11 games. And he had a little bit of a knee injury nick him up there. But it looks like he's the kind of guy that might be a rotational edge rusher in the NFL with some potential, obviously. So that's great. And I did see that he did have a DUI in college. I think that was last season. But they decided not to suspend him. And what it says from what I've found, it looks like he got arrested for falling asleep in his car when he was drunk. So it looks like he was trying to not drive and just sleep in his car, but that's technically illegal. You can't do that. If your keys are in your car, you can't sleep in your car. You will get arrested for that. I don't know if it's technically driving under the influence or operating under the influence or the intent of driving under the influence. I'm not sure what they classified it as, but he did get arrested for that. So yeah, I mean, I definitely have a lot more respect for a guy who's going to choose to sleep in his car instead of trying to drive and put other people at risk. I'm definitely not going to hold that against him, that DUI. So yeah, that's what I think about that. But this is a guy that does have a lot of potential and could become a starter in the NFL. And it looks like he's at least going to be a rotational edge rusher at the least. And then with the 16th pick in the 5th round, this is the guy that everybody's talking about for the Detroit Lions. Everybody's really excited about this tackle out of Oregon. He has allowed 1 sack, or he actually allowed 0 sacks in his senior year. He's a 4-year starter at Oregon. And I know they do run a lot of read option at Oregon, but you have to, 0 sacks in an entire year is kind of insane. I mean, I'm sure there were times when they were in 3rd and long and they had to throw the ball. So the fact that he gave up 0 sacks in a year is pretty crazy. So I definitely have a lot of respect for that. I think hopefully he may be able to become a starter in this league. It looks like he's a pretty athletic tackle with a lot of potential. Maybe not the best handwork, but a very good run blocker as well. And it does look like he's the kind of guy that has the ability to play guard if we need another guard to play if someone goes down. So that's also very good to have a guy that has the ability to block on the inside. So that definitely does add value to this pick. And he's also a guy that might develop into a pretty good starter down the road. And this is kind of what I pointed out in my last video about Rick Wagner. You know, he's 28 years old. He kind of struggled last year at times, and he also was injured. So it's good to have a guy that might be able to come in if he gets hurt or if he's struggling. So that I think this is a very good move, and this is what I really wanted to do. I thought the Lions should draft a tackle in the 3rd round to trying to get a guy with developmental tools. But I think the fact that we got this guy in the 5th round is outstanding. And then with the 19th pick in the 7th round, the Lions drafted a fullback, which is pretty surprising. I didn't know fullbacks still get drafted, but I guess we drafted a fullback. And, Yeah, I have no idea what to say about that. I'm not going to give you my scouting report on that guy because I've never even watched this guy play. But apparently he was a fullback blocking for Rashad Penny, if that means anything. And from what I've been reading from scouting reports, Rashad Penny had one of the highest block yardage out of any running back in college football. Basically, when he got the ball, he had an average of I don't know if it was 3 yards per carry blocked or something like that, but it was higher than most other running backs in college. So that's something to look at. Maybe this fullback was one of the reasons he had so many blocked yards. And I think blocked yards is kind of a weird stat to look at, but that's why some people weren't very high in Rashad Penny, is because he has such a good offensive line and a very good run blocking scheme. And from watching some film on Rashad Penny, they ran a lot of lead plays. So yeah, that's pretty good considering we have LeGarrette Blount on the team now, who definitely can run the lead play very well. That has pretty much been his bread and butter his entire career, is running that lead play, inside zones and power plays and stuff like that. Things with fullback, I think that's going to be great. Having LeGarrette Blount with a fullback on the goal line in short yardage situations, that's going to be great. And yeah, I'm very happy with what the Lions did in this draft. They did a good job of addressing our needs, especially on the offensive line in the run game, and then also getting that rotational defensive pass rusher, defensive lineman, whatever you want to call him. I don't know if he's going to be playing defensive end, probably not outside linebacker, but maybe defensive tackle in a 43. No idea what we're going to even be running next year. Matt Patricia has been pretty quiet about the scheme he's about to be running, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, going into this draft, I really thought we had to do a good job of trying to get guys on the offensive line and defensive line, not just starters as well. We needed to get some depth guys, and that's what we did. We got a depth tackle that can play guard. We also got a depth defensive lineman. We also got a starting center, starting running back, and a depth safety. So I feel like that's very good. So yeah, we really did a good job of addressing needs this draft, especially if you agreed with the needs that I had going into the draft. And I think for Bob Quinn coming into the second year here, he really needed to hit on most of these picks. And I think he did. Outside of that third round pick, there's really nothing that you can say about this draft that's negative. I think a lot of people might be upset because it's kind of a reach, but like I said, it's only a third round pick. Overall, I'd probably give this draft probably something like a B+. It's kind of hard to tell before you start playing, but we'll probably know by week 5 or week 6 the role that all these guys are going to be having, and I'm hoping that they all pan out, and I guess we'll see. This Lions definitely have a very tough schedule coming up this year. It's not going to be easy, but hopefully these new players will help us win more games this year. And hopefully help us get back to the playoffs, because that's ultimately what we need to be doing when we have a quarterback like Stafford. We cannot be wasting prime years of his career anymore. We have to start blocking better, and we have to start running the ball to protect him. So yeah, guys, that's what I think about this draft. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.